want you to close your eyes for a second. If you're driving or, operating heavy machinery, obviously keep them open, but just try to shift your mind's eye.
Okay.
I want you to imagine a field. It's a pretty standard rolling green pasture. And in this field, there is a herd of cattle.
Mm-hmm.
They are grazing, they eat, they rest, they digest, they move from morning to night, day to day, and they are completely tied to the peg of the moment. They feel neither melancholy nor boredom. They just are.
It is a peaceful image, isn't it? Almost idyllic. It's the kind of thing you'd see on a screensaver or one of those relaxation videos.
It is. But knowing the text we are diving into today, I have a feeling we aren't visualizing livestock just for the sake of, relaxation or mindfulness.
No.
We aren't here to count sheep or cows in this case.
You would be absolutely right about that. This is not a meditation tape. Because in this picture, there is a human observer. A man standing by the fence, leaning against the wood, looking at the beast. And the strange thing is, he looks at the animal with envy. He actually asks the animal, "Why do you just look at me and not speak to me of your happiness?"
And the beast actually wants to answer. That's the tragic part that jumped out at me. It's so strange.
It is.
The beast wants to say, "The reason I don't speak is because I always forget what I wish to say." But then in that very instant, it forgets that answer too and just remains silent. And the man is left standing there just wondering.
He wonders because he cannot learn to forget. He wonders why he's burdened by this invisible chain that runs with him wherever he goes. And that chain is the past.
The past.
We humans say, "I remember." And according to the man we are discussing today, that very phrase, "I remember," is our curse. It is the thing that separates us from the happiness of the beast.
We are diving deep today into one of the most provocative, fiery, and honestly devastating essays ever written by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. It's titled The Use and Abuse of History. Or, in the translation we are using by Adrian Collins with the Julius Kraft introduction, it's called The Use and Disadvantage of History for Life.
And it is a sledgehammer of a text. It really is. It just comes at you.
Now, before we get into the heavy philosophy, let's set the stakes here. Because usually, when we think of history or we think of being well-read in history, we view it as an unqualified good.
Of course.
We think of dates, battles, kings, memorizing facts for a test, or just being the smart person at the dinner party who knows why the Roman Empire fell or who fought in the War of the Roses.
Exactly. We view history as education. It's a sign of culture. It's a sign of refinement. If you know history, you are, quote unquote, civilized. But Nietzsche's coming here with a very radical take.
He really is.
He's arguing that this obsession with history, this massive accumulation of knowledge about the past that we prize so highly, isn't just boring or academic. It is actually a disease.
A disease. That's strong language.
He calls it a malignant historical fever. He argues that an excess of history actually paralyzes life.
Paralyzes it.
It stops us from acting.
Yeah.
It stops us from feeling. It turns us into walking encyclopedias instead of living, breathing human beings who can create something new.
That is a massive claim. And the mission of this deep dive is to unpack that diagnosis. We are going to look at why Nietzsche thinks we need to learn the art of forgetting, which, goes right back to those cows we imagine.
Right back to the field.
We're going to look at the 3 specific ways history can actually be useful if we're careful. Because he doesn't hate history, he just hates how we use it.
Right, he wants us to handle it with gloves. Like a dangerous chemical that can be medicine or it can be a poison.
And then we are going to look at the 5 terrible dangers that happen when we overdose on the past. And I think, honestly, this is going to feel like a roadmap for the modern soul.
I think so too.
Because even though he wrote this in the 19th century, the feeling of being overwhelmed by information, of being paralyzed by too much context, that is something every single listener is going to recognize.
It's almost more relevant now than it was then. I mean, we have the internet, we have the history of the entire world in our pockets. If Nietzsche thought 19th century Germans were overdosing on history, he would look at us and see us in a full-blown coma.
So let's go back to the fence. Let's go back to the man and the cow. Why is the beast happy and the man miserable? What is the actual, the mechanism there?
It comes down to this concept of the unhistorical. That's Nietzsche's term. The beast lives unhistorically. It goes into the present moment like a number without a remainder.
A number without a remainder. I love that phrasing. It implies there's nothing left over, right? No baggage.
Precisely. The cow doesn't hide anything. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't worry about what it did yesterday or what the other cows think of its lineage. It just is. It is entirely contained within the now. It cannot dissimulate. It is, in its own way, honest.
Whereas man is constantly resisting the weight of the past. Nietzsche writes that the past bows his shoulders. It travels with him like a dark, invisible burden.
And we try to disown it. We try to pretend it's not there. We try to distract ourselves. But it always returns like a specter. Nietzsche uses this beautiful but also haunting image in the text. He says, a leaf is continually dropping out of the volume of time and fluttering away, and suddenly it flutters back into the man's lap.
And that leaf is the memory you can't shake.
It's the reminder that it was.
And when you say it was, that's the struggle, isn't it? The past tense.
Yes, it was is the password that gives conflict, suffering, and satiety access to man, because he can't change it. He looks back and sees this long, long chain of events, and he realizes his existence is fundamentally just an imperfect tense, a thing that can never be completed.
So his argument here is radical. Happiness, true happiness, and even the ability to make others happy is totally dependent on the capacity to forget, to feel unhistorically.
Think about it deeply. If you couldn't forget anything, you would see everything as a constant flux. Nietzsche calls this becoming.
Becoming.
If you are hyper-aware of the history of every single atom, every single cause and effect that led to this very moment, you wouldn't even dare to raise your finger.
You'd be paralyzed by the causality of it all.
You would be paralyzed by the infinite chain behind every single action. Nietzsche says a man who cannot forget is like a man who cannot sleep. If you stay awake forever, eventually the lack of sleep destroys the organism.
Sure.
The same is true for history. If you cannot sleep from the past, you cannot live in the present. You need the darkness of forgetting to have the light of action.
So is he saying we should just lobotomize ourselves? Is the goal to become cows? Because as peaceful as that field looked, I don't think any of our listeners actually want to give up their human consciousness just to chew cud.
No, and that's the nuance. It's a critical point. He's not saying we should return to the animal state. He admits clearly that man only becomes man by harnessing the past. We need memory to be human. But there has to be a balance. It's not about erasing the past. It's about having the power to limit it.
Yeah.
He introduces this crucial concept called plastic power.
I highlighted this phrase in the notes, plastic power. It sounds like a superhero ability or maybe something out of, I don't know, material science. Unpack that for us.
In a way, it is a superpower. Plastic here comes from the idea of plasticity, of molding, of shaping. It is the capacity of a person or a whole culture to grow out of itself. To take the past, to take foreign things, wounds, traumas, and transform them into your own blood and sap.
It's a digestive metaphor, isn't it? It sounds very biological.
It's explicitly digestive. Nietzsche loves talking about digestion. He sees the mind and the body as very, very similar. So plastic power is your mental immune system and your mental digestive tract. It's the ability to heal from the past.
So a healthy person with high plastic power can experience something terrible or learn a piece of history, and they can incorporate it into their life without being destroyed by it.
Exactly. Nietzsche says a strong nature can assimilate a lot of history. They can take a disaster and turn it into strength. They can take a strange new idea and make it their own. But a weak nature is like a delicate stomach. A single scratch of a poison knife can kill it.
Wow.
If you lack this plastic power, the past doesn't nourish you, it crushes you. You can't digest it, so it just sits there, rattling around.
And this leads to his idea of the horizon. This really resonated with me. He says every living thing needs a horizon to be healthy. What does he mean by a horizon in this context?
Imagine you are standing in a vast open valley.
Yeah.
If you can see everything, every infinite possibility, every past event, every consequence for miles and miles in every direction, you can't act. You're just overwhelmed.
Right. You just stand there.
You need a boundary,
Yeah.
a line where your vision stops.
A limit to what you know. A conscious ignorance almost.
Yes. That ignorance, that forgetting creates a protective circle. Within that circle, within that horizon, you can actually build something. You can love someone. You can fight a battle. You can start a project.
He says you cannot act if you are analyzing infinite consequences. You need a veil of the unhistorical to have the courage to begin any great work.
Right. Think of a great general or a great artist or even an entrepreneur. If a general went into battle fully conscious of every single historical antecedent, every risk, every single way that previous battles had been lost, every drop of blood that would be spilled, he would freeze.
He'd be a terrible general.
He would be. He needs to be a little bit blind to the past to create the future.
He needs to think his cause is the only cause that matters in that moment. He needs that tunnel vision.
Exactly. Nietzsche calls this the unjust state. To do anything great, you have to be a little unjust to everything else. You have to forget the other perspectives for a moment and focus entirely on your own deed.
So we have the beast, which is the unhistorical. We have the historical man, who looks back to understand the present. But then Nietzsche throws in a third character, just to complicate things. The suprahistorical man. Who is this guy?
This is a strange figure. And honestly, it's a figure Nietzsche sees a lot of in his own academic circles. The superhistorical man is someone who has looked at history so much, studied it so deeply, that he becomes cynical, or perhaps transcendently wise, depending on how you view it.
How so? What does that look like?
He sees the world as complete at every single moment. He looks at the past 10 years or the past 1,000 years, and he says, the next 10 years won't teach me anything that the past 10 didn't already fail to teach.
Oh, wow.
He sees history not as a process of progress, but as a static, recurring cycle of the same mistakes, the same ambitions, the same failures.
That sounds incredibly depressing. It's like same soup, just reheated.
It can be. It leads to satiety.
To
loathing, even. Nietzsche quotes the Italian poet Giacomo Leopardi here. The line is, "Nothing lives that were worth thy pains. The earth deserves not a sigh."
The earth deserves not a sigh. That is bleak. That is a dark place to be.
It's a view that says, it's all the same. It's all mud. Why bother building a house? It'll just fall down like Rome fell down. Why write a book? It will just burn like the Library of Alexandria. It's a kind of wisdom, but it's a paralyzing wisdom.
And surprisingly, Nietzsche, who we often think of as this dark, brooding philosopher, he actually rejects this view, doesn't he?
He does. He rejects it passionately. He admits there is a certain wisdom in it, a certain truth, but he says it is a wisdom that kills life. And for him, life is the ultimate value.
Life comes first.
Always. So he sides with the active man. He says, let's leave the superhistorical people to their loathing. We want to live. We want to build. But to do that, we have to figure out how to use history as a tool rather than letting it use us.
Which brings us to the core framework of the essay, the 3 modes of history. This is the practical toolkit. Nietzsche says history is only valid if it serves life.
That is his golden rule. That's the question you have to ask of any historical study. Does it serve life? If it doesn't, throw it out.
And he identifies 3 specific ways it can do that: monumental, antiquarian, and critical. Let's break these down, because I think everyone listening will identify with at least one of these. Let's start with monumental history.
Monumental history is history for the man of action and power. It is for the person who is fighting a great battle and needs a teacher, needs an example.
But why look to the past? Why not look to a contemporary teacher?
Because usually the present is disappointing. It's filled with small people. Imagine you are trying to reform a corrupt government or create a new revolutionary style of art. You look around at your contemporaries, and what do you see?
Small-minded people, bureaucrats.
Bureaucrats, cowards, people who tell you it can't be done. You feel alone. You feel like what you are trying to do is completely impossible.
So you look back.
You look back at the peaks of humanity. You look at Caesar. You look at Alexander the Great. You look at Raphael, at Michelangelo. And you say to yourself, greatness was once possible, therefore it is possible again.
It combats resignation. It's the ultimate hang-in-there poster. But instead of a kitten hanging from a branch, it's Napoleon crossing the Alps.
Precisely. It connects the peaks. It ignores the valleys between them. Nietzsche says monumental history creates a high road for humanity that runs through the brains of the great men of all ages.
A high road. I like that.
It allows the genius of today to converse with the genius of yesterday, ignoring the millions and millions of mediocre people in between. It gives you the company you crave. It tells you you're not alone.
But there's a catch. There's always a catch with Nietzsche. What's the danger of monumental history?
The danger is distortion. To make the past inspire you, you have to ignore all the messy details. You have to gloss over the causes and just look at the glorious effects. You create false analogies.
Right. You might think you're in the same situation as Caesar, but you aren't. The economics are different, the politics are different, the technology is different.
And that can lead to rashness. It can lead to fanaticism. You might start a war thinking you're a hero, when really you're just making a huge mistake because you didn't read the fine print of history.
Or worse. Nietzsche warns that when monumental history gets into the hands of the weak, the artistic dilettante or the lazy person, it becomes a weapon against the living.
This is a huge point for him. This is the let the dead bury the living concept.
Explain that. How do the dead bury the living?
Think about art critics, or that guy at the party who only listens to classic rock and says nothing good has been made since 1978.
We all know that guy.
They use the great monuments of the past to crush new creativity. They point to the great masters, to Mozart, to Michelangelo, and they say, look, The work is already done. Perfection has been achieved. Who are you to try to create something new? You are nothing compared to them.
I see this all the time. Movies aren't as good as they were in the 70s. Architecture peaked in the Renaissance. They used the monument to block the road, not to point the way forward.
Exactly. They wear the cloak of good taste, but really, they just hate the present. They hate the chaos and the messiness of new creation. They want to kill art by using the corpse of past art as a club.
Yeah.
It's a way for uncreative people to feel superior to creative people.
That is a powerful image. Okay, so that's monumental. High risk, high reward. Next is antiquarian history. This one feels, I don't know, softer. This is for the preserver.
Yes, this is for the conservative soul. And I don't mean politically conservative necessarily. I mean the person who loves their home, their city, their family, their ancestors. Nietzsche speaks almost tenderly about this at first.
He does. He talks about it as giving dignity to life, even a very simple life.
It's the feeling of looking at your small, rough, limited life. Maybe you live in a small town that no one on a map cares about, and finding meaning in it because your grandfather lived there, and his grandfather lived there, and you walk the same streets.
He uses the metaphor of the tree feeling its roots.
The tree feels its roots better than it sees them. That's the line. Antiquarian history anchors a people. It says, we are tough folk. We will not be uprooted. It connects you to the spirit of your house, your town council, your local festivals. It turns a drab existence into something meaningful because you feel you're part of a lineage.
It creates a we, a sense of belonging.
It does. It binds generations together. It makes you careful with your heritage. You want to pass it on. But, like monumental history, it has a pathology. It can go very wrong.
What happens when the antiquarian goes wrong?
The danger is that the antiquarian has a terribly limited field of vision. It sees everything close up, but it has no perspective. It treats everything old as equally venerable just because it is old.
So you end up hoarding. You can't tell the difference between a valuable tradition and just, well, junk.
You end up mummifying life.
Oh.
The antiquarian spirit cannot create. It can only preserve. When it degenerates, it becomes the mad collector raking through dust heaps. Nietzsche describes them breathing in moldy air, greedy for anything that is bibliographical, just collecting facts about the past.
And the determination to preserve the old becomes the determination to reject the new.
Exactly. If you revere everything that has ever happened, you become paralyzed. Every new deed, every new idea seems like a disrespect to the ancient custom. The tree dies from the top down because the roots are choking it.
You see this in institutions that refuse to change because we've always done it this way.
That is the motto of the diseased antiquarian.
Okay, so if monumental is for the creator and antiquarian is for the preserver, what is the third one? Critical history?
Critical history is for the sufferer, the liberator. This is for the person who is oppressed by a present need and must cast off a burden at any price.
This sounds like the revolutionary approach, the iconoclast.
It is. Critical history brings the past to the bar of judgment. It interrogates it, it condemns it. Its motto is, every past is worthy of being destroyed.
Ouch. That is harsh. Every past is worthy of being destroyed.
That sounds nihilistic. It sounds it, but Nietzsche argues it's absolutely necessary for life. It's not about some abstract sense of justice. It's about the verdict of the living force that wants to grow. And sometimes to grow, you have to cut the roots with a knife.
You have to look at a tradition, a dynasty, a belief system, and say, this is an error, this is a poison, we must end it.
Right. If you are born into a society with a terrible, oppressive tradition, antiquarian history would tell you to respect it. Monumental history might tell you to find a hero within it. Critical history tells you, smash it.
But cutting roots with a knife sounds dangerous.
It is incredibly dangerous. And this is the warning. It is dangerous to the one doing the cutting. Because, as Nietzsche puts it, we are the result of previous generations.
Yeah.
We are the result of their errors, their crimes, their passions.
We can't just shake off the chain and walk away clean. It's inside of us.
No. Even if you condemn the past, you have that past in your blood. When you try to destroy it, you create a conflict between your inherited nature and the new discipline you were trying to plant. And usually the inherited nature is stronger.
So the critical historian often destroys themselves in the process.
Often, yes. Or they become bitter, resentful. But Nietzsche says sometimes it is a risk we must take to free ourselves. We have to attempt to give ourselves a second nature to override the first one we were born with.
So all three modes, monumental, antiquarian, critical, are necessary tools. We need the inspiration of the monumental, the rooting of the antiquarian, and the freedom of the critical.
But all three are toxic if used incorrectly. They are toxic if they are not serving life. And that brings us to the second half of the essay, Nietzsche's diagnosis of his own time, the historical sickness.
This is where he stops being the abstract philosopher and starts throwing punches at the 19th century German education system. But again, let's look at this through the lens of today. He talks about the indigestible stones.
Yes, he says modern man carries around a huge heap of indigestible knowledge stones that just rattle around inside his belly.
That is such a visceral image. I can almost feel it, like you've swallowed a bunch of gravel.
And it describes the separation of inner and outer. This is central to his critique. In ancient cultures, like the Greeks, what they knew and who they were was the same thing. Their culture was a unity.
Meaning, if a Greek knew philosophy, he lived philosophically. It wasn't just a subject in school.
Right. But modern man, we have a chaotic inner world, stuffed with facts, figures, history, foreign languages, philosophies, data points. But our outer life, it's just a gray conventional uniform. There's no connection.
He calls us wandering encyclopedias.
And he notes that the binding of this encyclopedia says, Manual of Internal Culture for External Barbarians.
Wow.
We know everything about culture, but we don't have a culture.
Because real culture is a style of life. He says it's a unity of artistic style in every expression of a people. Their clothes, their buildings, their laws, their art.
It all hangs together.
But we just have knowledge about culture. We are critics, not creators. We can tell you the 10 different architectural styles, but we can't build a beautiful building.
And because our inner life is so chaotic, because we have swallowed the history of the entire world without chewing it, we rely on convention to hold us together. We wear the gray coat. We're afraid of being unique because we have no solid core.
Right.
We mask ourselves in this German inwardness, which Nietzsche thinks is just a weak excuse for having no coherent style, no external expression of who we are.
It's like we are afraid that if the inner life vanished, nothing would be left but a vulgar exterior. That's a scary thought. If you took away all the things we've read and watched and consumed, what is left of us?
That is the question. Is there a you underneath all the data? And he breaks this down into 5 specific dangers. 5 ways this excess of history destroys life. We need to go through these because they explain exactly why we feel so burnt out.
Okay, let's run the gauntlet. Danger number 1, the weakened personality.
This is the spectator syndrome. Man becomes a passive viewer of the world. Even great wars and revolutions are just stories to be consumed, not experiences to be lived.
He says the war isn't even over before it's being converted into printed matter 1,000 times over.
Think about how we consume news today. Something terrible happens, and instantly its content, it is analyzed, categorized, historicized. We don't feel the immediate impact of events. We feel their historical significance. We distance ourselves. We become passive.
And he calls us eunuchs guarding the historical harem.
Yeah.
Wow, that is evocative. Unpack that for us.
A eunuch in a harem can look at a woman, can know everything about her beauty, can guard her, can describe her, but he cannot be with her. He cannot be productive. He cannot create life.
So the modern scholar is like that.
The modern scholar knows everything about history, all the great deeds, all the passions, all the revolutions, but is incapable of creating history himself. He is neutered by his objectivity.
Nietzsche twists Descartes here. Instead of, I think, therefore I am, he says the modern historian is stuck in, I think, therefore, well, nothing.
Vivo ergo cogito. I live, therefore I think, is what it should be. Life first, thinking second. But we have replaced living with cogito, the cogital man, a thinking machine, not a living being.
Which leads right into danger number 2, the illusion of justice, or this obsession with objectivity.
This is a direct attack on the academic mindset. In the 19th century, historians prided themselves on being mirrors. Pure, detached, neutral. They thought if they had no emotion, they were telling the truth. Nietzsche just hates this.
He calls it the cold demon of knowledge.
He asks, is the man who sees everything and feels nothing really just? No. Nietzsche says true justice is a terrible virtue. It judges. It requires strength. It requires you to have a moral standard and say, this is right and this is wrong.
But the objective historian just says, well, on the one hand this happened, but on the other hand that happened.
It's the delicate neutrality of the weak. He compares it to arranging a heroic symphony for 2 flutes for the use of opium smokers.
That is a savage burn, taking a powerful, passionate piece of music and just watering it down until it's background noise.
It strips the past of its power. You take the blood and thunder of history, real people suffering and fighting, and turn it into a polite, sterile, academic discussion. Nietzsche says history should be written by men of experience and character. Only a man who has built something can understand a past builder. The neutral observer is just a liar.
A liar.
They assume a detached aesthetic state like a painter in a storm, but they are deceiving themselves. They are still human. They just lack the courage to admit their bias.
Okay, danger number 3, thwarting instincts. This is about maturity and education.
Yes. He says we are kicking young people through the centuries. We force students to digest thousands of years of history before they have lived a single real year of their own lives, before they have any experience to anchor it to.
The exhausted hens metaphor.
Right. The scholars are hens forced to lay eggs too often. They produce a lot of books, a lot of papers, but the eggs are small, the hens are exhausted. The result for the youth is that they become blasé.
Blasé, meaning they're bored by it all.
Worse than bored. They are numb. They know everything, so nothing surprises them. Nothing can truly touch them. They are ripe too soon. And Nietzsche says when you are ripe too soon, you rot.
You get cynicism before you even had a chance to have enthusiasm.
Exactly. A young person should be fiery, biased, passionate, maybe a little bit stupid and naive. That's healthy. But we train them to be critical and objective before they even know who they are. We destroy their instincts with too much science.
Which connects directly to danger number 4, the belief in old age. The idea that we are epigoni.
Epigoni means latecomers. It's the deep-seated cultural belief that the great party is over. We missed the Renaissance, we missed the Reformation, we missed the Greek Golden Age. We are just the gray hairs of humanity sweeping up after the celebration.
It's a paralyzing feeling. Everything has been done. There are no new ideas.
Nietzsche traces this back to the medieval Christian memento mori. Remember, you must die. But it's worse now. It's a historical memento mori. It says our culture is old, tired, and just waiting for the end. This kills all action. If you believe you are at the end of the timeline, why build for the future?
You just become a librarian of the past, a librarian of the graveyard.
Precisely. You become a senior citizen of history from the day you were born.
And finally, danger number 5. This is the big one, philosophically. Irony and cynicism. And here, he goes after the big boss of German philosophy, Hegel.
This is where Nietzsche really attacks the god of his time. Hegel argued that history, with a capital H, is the unfolding of reason, that history is God realizing itself. He called it the world process.
So everything that happens had to happen. It was all part of a rational plan.
Yes, and because it had to happen, it was rational. This sounds comforting, but Nietzsche sees the trap immediately. It leads to a worship of success, of power. If a government wins a war, it was the world process. If a movement is crushed, well, it just wasn't rational.
It creates a yes man to history. To adapt ourselves to circumstances becomes the highest virtue. You just bow down to whatever happens.
And this leads to cynicism.
Yeah.
We shrug and say, it's just the world process. We surrender our personality to the machine.
And he brings up a specific writer here, right? Edward von Hartmann.
He does. He wrote a book called Philosophy of the Unconscious, and Nietzsche just tears him apart. He calls Hartmann a rogue and a philosophical parodist. He seems to think Hartmann is a complete joke.
But people took him seriously.
He thinks Hartmann's popularity is a huge, dark joke on the German people. Hartmann argued that the world process is leading us toward a final decision to annihilate existence, a voting on the last day.
A vote. A cosmic election to end everything.
Yes. Hartmann theorized that humanity would collectively, rationally, decide that life is pain and commit cosmic suicide. It's completely absurd.
And people took this seriously.
They loved it. Because it justified their passivity. It justified their ironic existence. They could say, we're just waiting for the end, so let's be comfortable bourgeois citizens in the meantime and not bother with anything great or difficult.
It lets you off the hook.
Completely. Nietzsche mocks this relentlessly. He says if we just surrender to the process, we are lower than the earthworm.
So to recap the diagnosis, we have a weakened personality, a false sense of justice, thwarted instincts, a belief that we are old and tired, and a cynical surrender to the so-called world process. It's a grim picture. But Leach is a doctor. He offers a cure.
He does. He says the antidote to the historical disease is twofold, the unhistorical and the suprahistorical.
We touched on the unhistorical. That's the art of forgetting, drawing a horizon.
Yes. Learning to sit on the threshold of the moment, to be present like the beast in the field. But the suprahistorical is different. These are the powers that turn the eyes away from becoming, from the constant flux of history, and towards that which gives existence an eternal and stable character.
And what are those powers?
Art and religion.
Why them? Why not science?
Because science, in his view, is part of the problem. Science sees everything as becoming. Science dissects. It explains origins. It says this beautiful painting is just a collection of pigments and chemical reactions. It says this religion is just a result of these sociological factors. It kills the mystery.
Right.
But art and religion look at the eternal meaning. They provide the atmosphere in which life can actually thrive.
Nietzsche says life must dominate knowledge.
That is the hygiene of life. Knowledge is a tool. If the tool starts killing the user, if the analysis kills the passion, you must stop the analysis. You need the veil of illusion to live.
And he places his hope in youth.
Yeah.
In the first generation of fighters.
He is calling for a generation that is uneducated in the modern sense, meaning they haven't been corrupted by this obsession with history yet. They are still honest. They are sincere. They don't have that terrible outer-inner split.
And he uses the parable of the Greeks to encourage them. I found this really hopeful because we always think of the Greeks as these perfect, original beings.
It is hopeful. He says, look at the Greeks. We think of them as these original culture creators, born fully formed. But originally, they were a mess. They were a chaos of foreign ideas. Semitic, Babylonian, Egyptian, their religion was a battlefield of Eastern gods.
They were just like us, overwhelmed by foreign information, by different cultures.
Exactly. But they did not perish. They organized the chaos.
How? What was the method?
By following the Delphic oracle. Know thyself. They didn't just passively absorb everything. They focused on their true needs. They asked, what do we need to live a noble life?
So they didn't reject the past entirely.
No, they mastered it. They threw out what was fake and foreign to them, and they assimilated what they needed. They used their plastic power. They created a new and finer nature.
So culture isn't a decoration you put on. It's a unity of thought and will.
It is a new nature. And Nietzsche believes we can do this too. But we have to be brave enough to be unhistorical sometimes, to forget, to ignore, to live.
This brings us to the end of the text. So Nietzsche isn't saying burn the history books. That's not the takeaway here.
No, absolutely not. He's saying, don't let the history books consume you. Use the past. Use monumental history to inspire you. Use antiquarian history to root you. Use critical history to free you. But never, ever lose the plastic power to interpret it for your own life.
It's about agency. Are you the reader of history or are you the writer of your own life?
Precisely. That is the fundamental choice.
You know, reading this, I kept thinking about our modern obsession with data. With analytics, we want to quantify everything. We want total transparency. We want to know the history of every tweet, every decision, every metric.
And Nietzsche would warn us, a man who has destroyed all illusions is punished by nature. We think transparency is the ultimate good, that more data is always better. But maybe we need the veil. Maybe we need a little bit of darkness, a little bit of forgetting to have the courage to try something new.
Because if you knew the statistical probability of success for any great venture, you'd probably never start.
You'd never start. The data would tell you it's a long shot.
Data might be our modern form of the historical sickness.
It very well might be. We are drowning in the what has been, and we're losing the what could be.
So the challenge for you listening today is this. Where is your horizon? What do you need to start analyzing? What do you need to forget just for a little while so that you can actually live?
Find your plastic power. Digest the stones. And don't be afraid to be a little bit unhistorical.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the present moment next time.